Hey, good evening. Welcome to the second community input meeting for the establishment of a police accountability board in Baltimore County. I'd like to welcome you all to the meeting this evening. My name is Troy Williams. I am the Chief Diversity Officer and the Executive Director of the Human Relations Commission for Baltimore County. And I'm very pleased to have you all join us this evening to have a discussion and some real community input around the implementation of our Police Accountability Board. Before we begin, I would like to thank our team from the Office of Community Engagement, Director Mandy Rimmel, for helping to facilitate tonight's meeting and ensuring that everyone that is attending who wants to provide testimony will have the opportunity to do so. And so with that, we will begin. We will start by introducing our esteemed Baltimore County Executive, Mr. Johnny Olszewski, to provide some opening remarks for this evening.
Well, thanks, Troy, and good evening to everyone. I want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight virtually. I also want to thank everyone who attended last night in person at the Reynoldstown Community Center. Troy, thank you for your efforts in moderating and leading in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space here in Baltimore County. I also want to recognize a few of my colleagues and partners on the council. I know that I see Council Chairman Julian Jones, I see Councilman Izzy Patoka. If there are other council members, I'm sure Troy will remind me or others, but I do see the two council members here. I also want to thank Drew Vetter, our Deputy Administrative Officer, who's been involved in a lot of the work on this particular issue, along with Sam O'Neill, my senior advisor. And again, I want to thank, like Troy mentioned, our OCE team for their facilitation of tonight's meeting and last night's meeting. We're here because we all want to make our police department even better and our community safer. And we know that our communities are safest when communities and law enforcement officers trust each other and work together. And we believe that building trust and equity in our police department is among the most important things that we can do. That's why we created the Equitable Policing Working Group, which Troy has been leading to recommend ways to improve policing in our communities. It's why we passed the Bipartisan Smart Policing Act to ban chokeholds, require implicit bias training, and prevent officers who had prior records of misconduct from serving in our department, along with codifying other reforms that were already underway. Last week, we introduced legislation to create a police accountability board for Baltimore County, consistent with state law. It's responsible for reviewing complaints of misconduct and disciplinary outcomes. It's another step to ensure that local government is open and accountable. As I mentioned, we were required by state law to put this legislation in by July 1st. This is session number 2. Where we are asking for your input to help us set the course for our first Police Accountability Board. I'm thrilled to have my partners on the council here to hear directly from you as well, because we do want to hear your concerns and what you want this board to look like. So again, I don't have much more to add. I just want to thank everybody else for being here, including Kathy Engers on behalf of Councilman Quirk on the call as well. And just thank my partners on the council as they work on this legislation with all of you and with your feedback. So at this point, to bring greetings on behalf of the County Council, I'm going to turn things over to the Chairman of the County Council, Chairman Julian Jones, to bring greetings, and then we'll turn the floor back over to Troy. Thanks so much.
Mr. Chairman, you may be muted.
There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, County Executive Olszewski. We certainly appreciate your leadership on this, as well as police reform measures that we put in place. I believe it was a couple of years ago, and you've been a tremendous partner in a wonderful county executive making all the right choices for us in Baltimore County. I want to thank all the citizens for participating tonight, as well as the citizens who came out last night. This is a very important subject, and we can only do better when we hear from you. So I thank you so much for your participation, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. As the county executive said, County Council will be taking up this legislation, and we will certainly be making probably some tweaks here and there, but Those things don't happen without your input. So I thank you for being here. Thank you very much, Mr. County Executive.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. We are also going to offer the opportunity to hear from our District 2 Councilman, Mr. Izzy Patoka.
Okay, thank you. I was unable to mute myself, but thank you, County Executive. Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Chairman Jones. Chairman Jones and I were both present last night, so we got a preview of what we'll hear tonight. And County Executive, your team did an excellent job. And I want to thank all of the participants that provided input last night. We look forward to you also having another opportunity on April 26th at the council work session before the May 2nd vote. So I think this is one of the most important things you can do, and it arms us with information so that we can make good, solid decisions that benefit all of Baltimore County. So thank you, County Executive, Troy, and Chairman Jones.
Thank you, Councilman Patoka. And then certainly last but not least, joining us, Councilman Quirk. Councilman Quirk, I want to offer you the floor to make any remarks. Councilman Quirk, are you unmuted? All righty, we will move forward and hopefully we'll hear from Councilman Quirk a little bit later on. So again, welcome. I wanted to start by just giving you an overview of the evening, kind of address some of the issues that we're going to talk about this evening. First of all, the purpose of our meeting tonight is to really kind of level set the community about the Police Accountability Board, what the overlay of the legislation looks like, how it's going to operate from a duties and responsibilities perspective, and most importantly, what we would like to hopefully see the community provide input around is what the membership characteristics look like, and who you would like to see serve as members of our Police Accountability Board. We understand the importance of civilian involvement, and so we want to make sure that we're getting it right and we're really hearing from the community as it relates to concerns about how the board is implemented in the membership representation. So we'll start with an overview of the legislation. We'll also provide you an overview of the timeline for implementation, and then we'll move right into our community discussion. And our staff from the Office of Community Engagement will facilitate individuals being able to provide comment and testimony. So with that, let's jump in. First of all, the establishment of the Police Accountability Board. As many of you probably know, the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021, which was passed in the state legislature, has required every jurisdiction in the state to establish a Police Accountability Board. The anticipated timeline for the establishment of these boards is July 1st, 2022. It should be noted, though, that there is a Senate bill pending, Senate Bill 389, that would possibly delay the implementation of the boards until October 1 of 2022. Several jurisdictions are at different places in the establishment of our boards. I think say that Baltimore County is kind of running in the forefront in terms of establishment of its board, and I think we're comfortable with the timeline no matter how it plays out. So what is the expectation at the state level for the duties and responsibilities of these boards? First of all, the boards will meet quarterly at a minimum with law enforcement leadership within their jurisdiction. And the focus of those meetings is to really focus on looking at trends and identifying ways to improve matters of policing within the jurisdiction. Secondly, the boards will appoint civilian members to both charging committees and trial boards. I think that's very important to note. I think we wanted to highlight that from yesterday evening, that there will be civilian involvement in both the charging committees and in the trial boards, as appointed by the police accountability boards. Thirdly, they will receive complaints of police misconduct filed by members of the public. They will also, fourthly, meet on a quarterly basis and review the outcomes of those complaints and look at the disciplinary matters considered by those charging committees. And then finally, at the year's end, they will offer up a report to the governing bodies of the county that identifies trends and disciplinary processes with respect to officers, and then makes recommendations about policies that would improve police accountability in their respective jurisdictions. You will find that the local legislation that we have proposed definitely reflects those requirements issued by the state. And so this is kind of a timeline of how we are looking at the enactment of that local legislation that will empower our Police Accountability Board. Of course, the county executive issued the legislation at the local level on April 4th, on Monday. We had our first community input meeting on yesterday evening in person, and now, of course, today we are holding our virtual community input meeting. We anticipate, as was mentioned earlier, that the council will have a working session on the 26th, where you will have yet another opportunity to provide community input and testimony on the legislation itself. And then on May 2nd, we anticipate that there will be a vote on the legislation. And then we will be prepared and in a good position to actually implement the Police Accountability Board on July 1, 2022. Even though it may be subject, again, to some delay, we will be well positioned by July 1. So let's go in a little bit deeper. What exactly does the legislation that we propose locally do? I think there's 3 key points that we want to take away from this. First of all, the legislation establishes the Police Accountability Board under our boards and commissions portion of the county code. So that's section 3. So section 3, 2601 will actually add the Police Accountability Board as a formal part of county government through its boards and commissions. Secondly, under the 2602 section of section 3, we will outline the membership, duties, and responsibilities of the Police Accountability Board. And then thirdly, under the ethics requirements within the county, it will also add the membership of the Police Accountability Board as having the requirement to provide financial disclosures. So those are the 3 key areas that the legislation addresses. The legislation, when is enacted, will take effect 15 days after its passage, and it'll apply to all complaints that were filed on or before or after July 1, 2022. So let's take a closer look at the membership. With respect to the membership of the board, there will be a 9-member board to include the chair. 7 of those members will come from the respective councilmatic districts. They will be residents of their respective councilmatic districts. And 2 of those board members will be appointed at large by the county executive. All members will be ultimately appointed by the county executive. These members shall be adult residents of our community. We anticipate that we would like to give serious consideration to reflecting the diversity of the county. So, and that's the full spectrum of diversity: geographic, socioeconomic, race, ethnicity, age, gender, the entire kind of diversity spectrum will be considered. No active law enforcement officers will be eligible to serve as members of the Police Accountability Board. And every member will undergo a criminal background check. Members that are convicted of a felony or misdemeanor that carries more than a 2-year statutory penalty will need to report that and will be removed from the board. We have actually taken a little bit more liberal approach than several of our other jurisdictions in that regard, because we do want to afford a lot of people the opportunity to serve. And then finally, as I stated earlier, the county executive shall appoint a board chair that has experience that is relevant to the appointment. And that chair shall serve a term of 2 years. Generally speaking, the terms of service for the board will be 3 years. But we should note that in the initial terms, they are going to be staggered, because what we don't want to find is that we're having turnover of the board all at one time. So, for example, it would be 4 members appointed for a 1-year appointment, 3 for a 2-year appointment, and then 2 for a 3-year appointment. And again, this will allow us to have some continuity on the board and not have kind of that immediate brain drain with everyone leaving at the same time. The duties. Again, you will see that the duties of the Baltimore County Police Accountability Board directly reflect the state requirements. So they will also hold quarterly meetings with law enforcement agencies and leadership and really focus on improving policing. We will also have them appoint civilian members to both our charging committees and our trial boards. And then they will also receive complaints of misconduct, and they will also forward those complaints of misconduct to internal affairs for investigation within 3 days. On a quarterly basis, they will review outcomes of disciplinary matters considered by charging committees, and they will also issue an annual report to both the county executive and the county council that identifies trends in disciplinary processes and makes recommendations on policy and as to how we can improve police accountability here in the county. The characteristics or the requirements of our complaint process. A complaint of police misconduct filed with the PAB must include the following. It must include the name of the officer accused of misconduct. Certainly, it must have all of the facts that are relevant to that complaint. And then it also has to have the contact information of the complainant or the individual that files the complaint on behalf of someone who was unable to file it themselves. And then finally, those complaints do not need to be notarized. They just need to be completed and submitted to the PAB. And then as we look at the responsibilities listed under section 2602, 2 specific responsibilities. First is that, again, the board shall meet at least quarterly, and it will record all of its meetings and maintain those meetings, documents, and recordings with the executive secretary of the board. And then in terms of budget and staffing to support the board, the PAB shall have its budget approved by the county council on an annual basis. The county will actually assign staff to support the PAB as needed. And the Baltimore County attorney shall serve as the legal advisor to the Police Accountability Board. Not to be confused with the state's attorney, that's actually the county attorney will actually be the legal advisor. That was a point of clarification on yesterday evening, so I'll make sure we got that. And then in the event of a conflict, the Police Accountability Board can request outside counsel as necessary. So that is kind of the overview of the legislation. That is where we're looking to go. That this is the next step in police reform and accountability in Baltimore County. We're very excited about that. But we really wanted to also focus tonight on some discussion. And so we're looking to hear from you all with respect to your perspectives on the Police Accountability Board. But specifically, again, as I stated earlier at the onset of the presentation, what do you want to see in the membership and the priorities of that board? So we put a couple questions that we'll leave up to kind of get you to think about it, kind of get your juices flowing around the discussion for consideration as you kind of bring your testimonies forward. But these are the things that we're really particularly interested in. Number one is how can we ensure full representation of all segments of the community on the Police Accountability Board? We really want to make sure that this is a board that is not only diverse, but inclusive of all perspectives. Secondly, we want to know, are there specific groups that you would like considered for representation on the board? Then thirdly, what are the specific issues you would like candidates, potential members of the board to address in their application, nomination, or interview process? And then relatedly, as they become members of the board, what policing improvements would you like the PAB to prioritize when collaborating with law enforcement leaders during those quarterly meetings? So those are the questions that we're going to frame our discussion around this evening as we get your input. But then finally, I also wanted to note that if you are an individual who is interested in becoming a member of the board, you can go to the Baltimore County website at baltimorecountymd.gov and simply type in boards and commissions, and it will take you to the link for the Police Accountability Board. We also have an email address that you can provide additional testimony, thoughts, input, comment, or make your desire to be a member of the board known. And that email address is pab@baltimorecountymd.gov. And I'll repeat that. That email address is pab@baltimorecountymd.gov. Okay. So with that, again, we're going to leave those questions up. We're going to begin to open up the floor for testimony from you, the community. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to V.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Troy. Good evening. Before we open up for comments, do we want to see if Councilman Quirk is on and to provide him a chance to speak?
Absolutely.
Councilman Quirk. If not, then I'll just jump in.
Verinda, I think Kathy Angers is on.
Here for Councilman Clark.
There you go.
Couldn't make it today. I
Perfect.
just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and coming out last night, because the best government is the government that we all participate in. And it'd be good to hear everyone's thoughts. Feel free to email or call our office as well if anybody's on here from District 1. And just want to say thank you, and thank you for putting this together.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Before we open up for comments, there are a few things we want to mention. This community input meeting is not the only nor the last opportunity for you to provide the administration your input. You can always email us. I'll put the email address in the chat box if not done so already. Also, the community will have the opportunity to provide legislative testimony before the County Council on April 26th. Because tonight's meeting is virtual, the process to speak varies from yesterday's in-person meeting. I will call upon individuals to speak. When your name is called, please unmute yourself and begin with your comment. I will begin by calling the names of those individuals who submitted a request to speak prior to the start of tonight's event. After that, I will call on the individuals who have submitted their names in the chat box. After that, please limit your remarks to 90 seconds. If your feedback begins to exceed the 90-second mark, I will thank you for your comments and request that you email us the remainder of your feedback. This ensures that everyone receives a chance to speak tonight. Please remember to mute your mic after you have spoken. Last, but certainly the most important point I would like to make, I apologize in advance for mispronouncing anyone's name. Thank you for your patience. From the list of individuals that submitted a request prior to tonight's meeting, Adrian Miranda, you may begin with your comment. Adrian Miranda, and I'm not sure if the muting system, if we're able to unmute them, or if anyone's able to unmute them individually. So if you're not able to, I can try to find you real quick. Do we know? Sorry.
Very irritated.
Pero en la esquina, en la puntica hacia la esquina.
All right, so Adrian Miranda, if you're on, you may begin with your comment.
Así como este.
All right.
Oh.
All right, next up on the list, Corey Krasinski. Corey Krasinski, you may begin with your comment.
Yes, hello. I don't have any suggestions for groups to do outreach to. I just wanted to say that I hope there is extensive outreach and promotion of the board, because I think with a lot of these commissions, it's sort of the same. You see a lot of the same faces and a lot of the same people know about them, but especially this kind of board, it'd be really great to get extensive outreach and marketing of it before July, so that there can be wide representation as the goal states. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next on the list, Angela Giuseppe. Angela Giuseppe, you may begin with your comment. Angela Giuseppe, you may begin with your comment. All right, next on the list, Claire Landers. Claire Landers, you may begin with your comment.
Thank you. Regarding composition of the Police Accountability Board, as a resident stated last night, not all councilmanic districts experience equally the police issues that our PAB will be constituted to address. No one who is a former law enforcement officer or is related to an officer should be eligible for the PAB. The interests and experiences of officers under investigation are already protected by their powerful union. That fellow officers of similar rank are required to serve on their trial boards ensures their policing perspective and background is understood and represented. Most importantly, PAB members should be weighted towards county residents living and working in communities with the most direct lived experience interacting with county police. People who have traditionally been the most vulnerable to and impacted by the bad police practices that the PAB is supposed to address. The county's own public safety data dashboard indicates quite clearly where we should be prioritizing outreach and recruiting PAB members. Background checks were mentioned. I also suggest 2 letters of reference of stellar character from people who have known and worked with these applicants for years, asking for at least one example where their good character was demonstrated toward other human beings. Work titles and professional status, membership on numerous boards, having friends in high places is absolutely no guarantee of good character, in my opinion. Interview questions should elicit relevant experiences in exercising good judgment in complex situations, whether there is an ability to recognize and counter one's own biases, including around race, gender, LGBTQ issues, mental health, etc. And most importantly, what interactions have you or someone you care about had with police here in Baltimore County or elsewhere? Last night you heard residents express fear that our PAB could shape up to be created as a powerless, toothless, minimally funded entity. I share that concern deeply. It has already unfolded exactly that way in many communities across the country. Please keep in mind that in Minneapolis, weak civilian oversight boards had fielded 12 complaints of alleged misconduct about former officer Derek Chauvin, and he continued to wear the badge until a public bystander's iPhone recorded him killing George Floyd. My hope is that at the end of our process together, Baltimore County ends up with a well-resourced, effective PAB we can really be proud of here, that we don't just get it done, but we are committed to getting it done right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, Erica McDonald. You may begin with your comment. Erica McDonald.
Good evening. I'm Erica McDonald, a resident of District 1 in Catonsville and co-president of the League of Women Voters of Baltimore County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that's dedicated to empowering voters and defending democracy. The League advocates against systemic racism in the justice system and, at a minimum, for preventing excessive force and brutality by law enforcement. We also advocate for prompt action within every level of government to eradicate systemic racism and the harm it causes. We believe that all people, and particularly people of color, deserve equal protection under the law, and we demand solutions for the terrible wrongs that have been done in the past and which still impact people of color in Baltimore County, who are disproportionately affected by police violence, misconduct, and even traffic stops. The intent of the Police Accountability Board is to provide community oversight of police misconduct investigations. For the community to have trust in the Police Accountability Board, it must represent minority communities, be transparent in its creation and work, and be empowered to act independently and ideally have the ability to conduct investigations on its own. The bill introduced by the county executive extends the good work done in the county to increase police accountability, building on the Smart Policing Act, but we have the opportunity to lead the state in police accountability in the way that we implement the Police Accountability Board. So we hope that we will make this a powerful and transparent police accountability board. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Gilliam. Gail Gilliam, you may begin with your comment. Gail Gilliam, you may begin with your comment. Barbara Schulter. Barbara Schulter, you may begin with your comment. Barbara Schulter. All right, so from the list of individuals that submitted their names in the chat box, Salim Higgins, you may begin with your comment.
Yes, thank you. Again, my name is Andy Salim Higgins. I'm from District 4. And I echo a few of the sentiments that some of the previous speakers voiced. I don't believe that anyone who has been a former officer or related to an officer should be on the board. Again, this PAB is really supposed to represent the voice of the communities that are being served. And I think it would be better for that board to not have some of those other influences. Again, the police departments are very well represented. I think this PAB provides the community an opportunity to have their voices heard. Again, my concern is making sure that this PAB has the power it needs to really be to have teeth, as someone said previously, as opposed to just sort of being a gesture, and a gesture that won't really help to address some of the systemic issues that the PAB is supposed to address. One of my largest concerns is the way that the information is being put out regarding the PAB. I think there needs to be a lot more outreach and creative ways to connect to the community. I found out about this virtual session via the news, which is great. But I just think more intentionality needs to be put towards different ways to reach the community. And I'm more than happy to follow that email and send some suggestions. But again, we don't want to come to a point where, as someone said before, we have sort of the same people, the same really small circle and segment of people being on the board, and it won't truly represent the communities that need to have their voices heard the most. So those are my concerns, and I thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for your feedback. I'm going to try Gail Gilliam one more time because I do see you in the participant list. I'm going to unmute you and see if that helps.
As we're doing that, Miranda,
Yeah.
Erica, I just wanted to thank her and others for flagging this issue of our need to put forward this police accountability board and encouraging us. Claire, Erica, others, thank you all so much for raising the issue and having us work with you all to provide these forums for the input as well. I just wanted to acknowledge the community members who raise the importance of this work and have us doing these community input sessions. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Last call, Gail Gilliam, you may begin with your comment. Gail Gilliam. Miss Gail Gilliam. All right, well, that is. So Troy, back to you. That's all I have on my side with regards to individuals that requested to speak today.
Great, thank you. I saw that we had Miss or Mrs. Forgive me, Hernandez make a comment in the chat section. I'm not sure if they wanted to speak publicly, but I wanted to afford them that opportunity.
Miss Perla Hernandez, would you like to provide any additional feedback or comments? You may begin if you'd like. Yep, Troy, back to you.
All righty, thank you. Well, that was relatively quick, but I really think it was some very good input. Definitely some things that we heard on yesterday, as well as some new points and ideas. But again, we're really thankful for that input, the community dialogue. I think that the points around some very intentional outreach are very well considered. And I think that we will be very mindful of doing some very deliberate outreach to make sure that everyone is aware of this opportunity to really help impact police reform in the county and move us forward. So with that, I'm going to offer the county executive the opportunity to provide us with any closing remarks before we depart, and then we will depart. Mr. County Executive.
Thanks, Troy, and thanks again to everybody for showing up again and participating. I know there was a lot of robust dialogue last night as well, and so to folks who participated last night and again tonight, I just want to thank you all very much for your interest and your input. We will continue to take it, seriously and under advisement as we work with the county council to finalize this legislation, and equally as important, ensure that we have the right individuals serving on this board, and that in my upcoming budget, we're putting forward the resources to staff and support this board. So I just want you to know how much we appreciate your presence and your participation and how much of a difference it truly does make. So Troy, thanks again to you for convening and moderating. Thanks to the community members who asked us to do it. And thanks to OCE for their facilitation. I really appreciate everyone being here tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And just a reminder to the community, the next opportunity will be on May 26th, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, April 26th, my apologies, during the council work session. So again, with that, have a great evening, everyone, and thank you again.